Hey, what's up? It's Tati back with another review of Dark Side of the Ring, this time Season 4, Episode 9, Bash at the Beach. You guys have waited long enough. And before I do get started with this review, I would like to put out there that as a New Yorker, and on the behalf of the state of New York, we do not claim Vince Russo. Now, for this episode, we do have three of wrestling's biggest idiots, obviously, one being Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, and probably the number one idiot out of all three, Dave Meltzer. The reason why I put him as number one idiot out of the three is because of his current contributions to professional wrestling. He is a loser. Now, for this episode, we talk about the events that happened with Bash at the Beach 2000, the infamous match with Hulk Hogan and Jeff Jarrett for the World Heavyweight title. They also talk about things that led up to that match and what happened after. And I do feel like with this episode, perhaps Vince Russo wasn't as honest as he should have been. I think the same about Eric Bischoff too. But for whatever reason, Vince Russo seemed to be sort of proud, but not proud about the things that happened. I don't know. It was a really weird vibe with these guys. Now, back in the 90s, we did have a war between WCW and WWF during that time. And for quite some time, we did have WCW. They were doing better, especially in the ratings compared to WWF. Now, one of the reasons why is Hulk Hogan and a couple of other veterans that were in WWF. They obviously jumped ship to WCW, and them being there attributed to much higher ratings as well, including them forming the NWO group. Now, I really wish that Hulk Hogan was in this episode because he is someone who played the key role in this whole thing. He is actually the ultimate villain in this entire story. So it would have been cool to hear what he had to say. And honestly, I think that if he were to participate in this episode, people would have had more of a negative thoughts about Hulk Hogan. So I guess it was a good thing for him to not be on this episode. So let's go more into the details about what led to that infamous moment at Bash at the Beach 2000. So the first thing Vince Russo says in this episode was that he despised the wrestling world, and also you can't be a good person and work in this business, which is obviously not true. I think he's just looking for an excuse to excuse how shitty he was or is. Now, the producers asked Dave Meltzer if Vince Russo caused more harm than good for the wrestling world, and Dave Meltzer take a few moments to gather his thoughts and say, yes, he caused more harm for the business. And I'm just looking at my TV like, Dave, the very same thing could be said about you. Now, let's take it back to the late 90s. WWF is finally doing much better than WCW. Matter of fact, WCW is not doing so great at all. Even though a lot of people were still watching it, WWF definitely had better entertainment, and they had better fresh stars compared to WCW, who were dealing with a lot of veterans who still wanted to stay in the limelight. So that was another reason why a lot of people preferred WWF during this time. So let's fast forward to 1999. WWF has pushed out a new show, SmackDown, for Thursdays, and Vince Russo is not happy about it. He already feels like he's spending way too much time with everything else, and now he's needed for SmackDown as well. And he felt like, you know what, I need a raise, and I'm never home with my family. So he goes to Vince McMahon, and he tells Vince McMahon, look, bro, you already know he said it. I need a raise. I need more money. I need some money so I could buy a new house so that my wife can live closer to her family so she can have some help with the kids because I'm never home. And Vince McMahon tells him, go get a nanny. And this pissed off Vince Russo. Vince Russo is like, bro, you don't tell an Italian man to get a nanny. That is just so wrong of you, bro. And by that weekend, he was at WCW. So now we had Eric Bischoff and we had Vince Russo, both under the same roof. But then at some point, WCW, they do let Eric Bischoff go. And then we have 3 months of Vince Russo pulling ideas out of his ass. And he's thinking, well, the ratings are going up. But according to Dave Meltzer, who knows everything, the ratings actually did not go up. And then after 3 months, they ultimately let Vince Russo go. So now they don't have Bischoff nor Russo. So then they have to come up with an idea with how can they help revive WCW. So they come up with the next best thing, hire both of them back, and that was a recipe for disaster. So now we have Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo working together. They're both working with the creative team, but they do have very different ideas. They decide to add some realism to WCW by taking a real life issue backstage where we have a division between the veterans and the young talent. The veterans are living in their glory days and they are staying on top no matter what. And then we have the younger talents that would never get past being mid-carders because these older guys don't want to share the spotlight with them. And they put that out as a storyline and the fans really wasn't feeling it. Now, we do have a division between certain people preferring to work with Bischoff and certain people wanting to work with Russo. And obviously that makes things a mess. And according to Eric Bischoff, Russo was doing everything in his power to obviously get more people wanting to work with him and having the networks favor his ideas compared to Bischoff's ideas. So now we are a week away from Bash at the Beach. And Vince Russo has a meeting with other people, part of the creative team. And Vince Russo asked them, who should be the next World Heavyweight Champion? And unanimously, everyone says Booker T. So what they're doing is, at this point, Jeff Jarrett, he has the World Heavyweight Championship, and he's going against several veterans, and he's beating them all. The last veteran he's going to go against is Hulk Hogan. He'll end up winning that match and then ultimately having a match with Booker T where he's going to drop the title to Book. So everyone was in agreement of that except for Hulk Hogan. Now, people don't know this, but Hulk Hogan had this absolute ridiculous contract that gives him 100% control over his contract. So if Hulk Hogan wanted to win, he's going to win. If he wanted to lose, he's going to lose. If you pull out an idea that he didn't like, he did not have to go with that. He can come up with his own damn idea and go based off of that, no matter what is what Hulk Hogan wanted. And unfortunately, I think that played a huge issue with what was going on in WCW because now that is pure selfishness. There's no reason why a wrestler should have a contract like that. I don't give a damn who you are, especially Hulk Hogan. Now, let me just say this, though. Hulk Hogan, he knew this was something he can get away with simply because for years he was Vince McMahon's boy toy. He was right under the belt of Vince McMahon. So he was used to getting his way. Arguably the most iconic wrestling figure of all time. And after leaving WWF, he knew, yes, he's still an iconic figure or whatnot, but he knew he was not going to get the same treatment like how he was getting with Vince McMahon. So he had to make WCW give him what he wanted so he can have as close of a career and lifestyle that he had with Vince McMahon, which is why he came up with this stupid shit with this contract, and WCW was stupid enough to give it to him. So when it came to Bash at the Beach 2000, he figured, you know what? I want Jeff Jarrett to drop the title to me, even though it made no sense whatsoever. If he wanted it, he knew he can have it. And that's the reason why he was using that power from his contract to get what he want. Now, Vince Russo did not think this was a good idea. Everyone had already voted I don't know if Eric Bischoff was part of this vote because he doesn't say he is, but everyone else seemed to have voted that Booker T should have gotten that title next. And unfortunately, Hulk Hogan did not see it that way. So Vince Russo had to come up with ideas to Hulk Hogan about how he can go against Jeff Jarrett and still lose but look good. So he proposed the first match and he was like, I made him look good, bro. And then Hulk Hogan said no. Then he proposed another match where he would have other veterans get involved in this match and he's beating everyone up. But at the end of the day, he's making Hulk Hogan look strong, bro. And Hulk Hogan will still lose. But Hogan was like, hell to the no, I want that title. And unfortunately, since he's crying like a baby, they just had to give it to him. So according to Eric Bischoff, what he and Hogan had discussed to be done was that Hogan was going to use his contract to help him win, showing off that he has 100% control with his contract and that he could do whatever the hell he want, and that Jeff Jarrett is going to have to take the dive and let Hogan win and he'll become the champion. Now Hogan will become the champion and he will leave with the title, and WCW is going to realize, man, this bitch is probably not coming back. The title's going to be vacated. Now we need a new world heavyweight champion. They're going to have a tournament going on, and then at the finals will be at Halloween Havoc where we will have a new champion. But before anybody can be crowned a champion, Hulk Hogan is just gonna pop out of thin air and be like, surprise bitches, you thought you got rid of me? I'm the real world heavyweight champion. And for whatever reason, I'm getting that whole CM Punk thing, putting the X on the title or whatever. Basically, somewhat kind of like that. Now, we are not really on the same page with what's going on. So Vince Russo and Bischoff decide they're going to call the president of WCW, and he's going to decide who has the better idea and what they're going to end up going with. And this is literally an hour before the pay-per-view. They call him up, he listens to both stories, and he goes with what Bischoff said. So they're going off with that stupid idea. I wouldn't want anyone to even know that I came up with that idea. So now Vince Russo is mad. He goes and finds Jeff Jarrett and he's like, look, bro, fuck Hulk Hogan. You're gonna go in that ring, lay your ass down in the middle of the ring, and let Hulk Hogan win. And Jeff Jarrett, he is not feeling this idea. First of all, who wants to do that? And second of all, Jeff Jarrett comes from a legendary wrestling family. His father was a promoter. His grandmother was a promoter. They would be rolling around in their grave. Well, not his dad at the time, but they would not be happy to see that he would have done something like this. However, Jeff Jarrett knows that this is his livelihood. He works at WCW. This is how he makes his money. This is how he feeds his family. He's going to have to make a decision. Either he's going to do what he's told or he's going to do what's right. And unfortunately, he knows he has to do what he's told because, well, he'll end up being fired. So at this point, Jeff Jarrett's music is on a loop. He is definitely regretting even being in this situation, but he knows he has to do what he's told, so he goes out there. So meanwhile, Hulk Hogan's on the mic talking shit, and Jeff Jarrett makes it to the ring. We do have Vince Russo, who is ringside, and he's just walking around pacing like he has nothing better to do. And at some point, he even takes the world heavyweight title and throws it into the ring like it ain't shit. And then here we go. We have Hulk Hogan on the mic, and he's like, you know what, brother? This is why this damn company's in the shape that it's in right now, because of this bullshit. And then he immediately puts his foot onto Jeff Jarrett. Ref counts to 3. Jeff Jarrett bolted out there and left to the back. And then we have Hulk Hogan, who's the new World Heavyweight Champion. And he leaves with Eric Bischoff, riding into the sunset. They hop on their jets and have mimosas like two bitches. Now, meanwhile, while they're on their jet, we do have Vince Russo, who decides he's going to get in that ring and basically shoot on Hulk Hogan. So now, Vince Russo decides to come back to the ring later on in the show. He is burying Hulk Hogan. He is talking about the politics backstage. And what I feel like was the worst comment he made was saying that the title meant shit. And then under the same breath, he goes, well, Jeff Jarrett, you're still the champion and you're going to go against Booker T in the main event. You just devalued the championship and then you're going to make a match for the championship? Who the fuck wants to fight for it now? He made things absolutely worse. And if you were to ask Hulk Hogan what was the worst thing that was said during that promo or shoot or whatever the hell you want to call it, he would say that it was Vince Russo calling him a bald ass bitch. Now, Hulk Hogan had been for years desperately holding on to the very few strands of hair that he has left. How dare Vince Russo come on the mic and talk about that? Now, once the plane lands, Hulk Hogan's little box phone had been blown up. People have been calling him to ask what the hell is going on with Vince Russo in that ring. Now, according to Eric Bischoff, whatever Vince Russo had did later on that night, they had no idea that that was going to happen. But when you ask Russo if they knew, Russo claims every single thing you saw at Bash of the Beach was planned by them. So they are liars acting like they had no idea that he wasn't going to do that later on in the night. And to be honest, at this point in the episode, I have a headache. I don't even care who's lying at this point. So the next morning after the pay-per-view, Hulk Hogan is feeling butthurt and he calls a local radio station in Tampa and he is letting them know exactly how he feels about Vince Russo. And ultimately, he ends up taking this to court where he's suing not just Vince Russo, but also WCW for defamation and also breach of contract. Breach of contract because he's supposed to have 100% control over his character, and basically Vince Russo shit all over his character. Now, I kind of find it a little bit weird because it's like, okay, you did get what you want that night, but because Vince Russo ends up saying things that you didn't like, now that's a breach of your contract. And honestly, everything ends up working out for Hulk Hogan. But first, they end up taking the case to court. What ends up happening is that it got dismissed. Now, they end up taking the court for an appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court, where they ultimately dismissed that because you cannot defame a fictional character. Now, that was Russo's biggest argument here, was that he did a shoot onto Hulk Hogan, not to Terry Bollea. So there's no way he's defaming him if he's talking about his character. So he ends up winning in that aspect. But don't think that Hulk Hogan did not laugh his way to the bank. This guy ends up settling with WCW about the whole breach of contract thing. And they ended up paying him what people are saying are in the 7 figures, which is absolutely insane. I do not feel like any active wrestler should have any type of pull like this at all, which is one of those reasons why I'm always saying, like, how the fuck does Tony Khan has active wrestlers as EVPs? I don't know what's in their contracts, but no one who is active on your roster should have any type of power like this. So Tony Khan claims to be a wrestling super fan, but for whatever reason is not learning from wrestling history. Now, this episode here, I really did enjoy. At times, I had to pause it because I was tired of Vince Russo. He has this way of saying wrestling that is so annoying. Wrestling. Like, it's just, I can't stand it. Anyway, Dave Meltzer is annoying. Eric Bischoff is annoying. I felt like Eric Bischoff was not being 100% truthful about what happened that day as well. And almost like everyone who had a part in this should feel ashamed. And also Hulk Hogan, obviously not being part of this, should definitely feel ashamed about using his power just to make himself look good. It stopped being about the wrestling business and was about him and his legacy. And I do think that that moment tarnish his legacy, because now people are looking at him like, you know, how can we work with someone like this who is always going to look at putting himself first no matter what happens? And if we didn't have that type of selfishness going on WCW, who knows? They could have lasted a hell of a lot longer than they did. You guys already know Vinnie Mac ends up purchasing WCW for mere pennies, while Eric Bischoff says he was trying to get it for 67 million, but they gave it to Vince McMahon for like 2 point something million. That is insane. Like, they literally wouldn't even take your money for it. They just wanted to get it the fuck off their hands and give it to Vince McMahon. And then you guys already know Hulk Hogan does drag his little ass over there right back to Vinnie Mac years later. WCW, as a kid, I did enjoy them. Obviously, being so young, I didn't understand what the hell was going on at that pay-per-view. But now that I am much older and I'm watching this episode, I'm still wondering what the hell happened at that pay-per-view. But some things did become a little bit more clear. It would just be much more clear if everyone would just be fucking truthful about what the hell happened. It was 23 years ago. If anything, if anyone looks the worst in the situation, it's the one person that would not even come on this episode, which is Hulk Hogan. Guys, thanks so much for watching my review. I will be back with the last episode, which was about Marty Jannetty. Right now, I gotta go watch Collision. Bye.